What we need to talk about today is that the situation is happening on multiple levels. So some people want to talk about what they perceive as the reason for the situation. There's reports. I don't have firsthand access to these reports, the information, but there's reports that the Egyptians warned the Israeli government on multiple occasions that a terror attack was coming, including the highest level communications, that there was a terror attack coming from Gaza, and those reports were obviously completely ignored. Not only that, we know that the attacks started either at 4 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, different debates on when it actually happened based on different videos, but there was no response from the Israeli army or Air Force for between 6 and 7 hours. Now, those are what we call proximate causes. The fact that they were able to reach and murder 1,300 Jewish people and to kill these people and to travel back and forth unhindered except by small local people and security units in different towns and so forth, and the police that they attacked in Sderot. Other than that, there was no real response against them. In fact, they murdered entire units of Israeli army Israeli armored soldiers in their own bases and their own tanks. So there was no opposition to them in an organized governmental way. So some people like to say, well, that's the problem. You see, that's the problem. Well, I want to suggest to you that that is something that obviously, if it's true, is horrific. And if it's true, it's beyond any ability to extend the stay in office of any of these people by even one more minute. They must all be removed immediately from office, from the highest commanders to the lowest commanders. But there's a greater problem. That's just the proximate cause. The greater problem is that in 2005, the government of Israel decided to demolish the Jewish communities in the Gaza Strip and to extradite, to deport physically the Jewish people that were living in the land of Gaza. And their excuse at the time was that that was going to promote peace. But everyone knew, and they were warned, that leaving that land was going to create a terror base which would be used to attack Israel. So what's happening now is not a surprise. Anyone who says that this is a surprise attack it may be shocking, may be stunning, but it's not a surprise. This was foreseen, and people screamed out against it. But the Israeli government pursued this with a maniacal pursuit and overrode everyone's protests and manipulated and brainwashed. There's videos on YouTube where you could watch how they brainwashed the soldiers into complying with orders. Now, the problem is not only that there was this one act in 2005 of destroying. I mean, we're talking now today, all of a sudden, you mentioned the Holocaust, of course, compared to anything happening today, except now today they're saying this is the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. But one second, the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust was in 2005 when Israel took the Jews destroyed and demolished the Jewish homes and the synagogues and uprooted the cemeteries. That was the biggest destruction of the Jewish community since the Holocaust. And if we take a look at what we learned, my friends, that the halacha the din is that if an enemy is coming to attack your border communities, even for merely straw, you have to make a preemptive strike to attack them and stop them. But here, my friends, those that destroyed the border communities, opening the entire core of the land of Israel to the destruction of the terror, was the Israeli government itself. That is what created today. But there's another problem. That 2005, according to my limited arithmetic, is 18 years ago. That means that anyone who's a commander in the Israeli armed forces today in a senior level was one of the people who was instrumental in destroying those Jewish communities in 2005. And somehow they have been allowed to continue. Think about it. If a commander is 55 years old, That means 18 years ago, when he was 37, he was a senior commander, because most people in the army are started 18 and they stay for 2 years, maybe some stay for 4 or 5 years, whatever. But the career guys already go up to higher ranks because they're the only guys staying in. Do you realize what this means, my friends? That the commanders of the intelligence services and the army today were those who were they carried out this destruction against the Jewish people in 2005. Therefore, I want to suggest that absent a very deep level of returning to God Almighty, a very deep level of tshuva from their hearts, and a public acknowledgement of their failures and a public exposure of those that pressured them to doing it. Absent that, in the natural order of things, these men are incapable of fighting war against the terror base that they participated in creating. They do not have, in the natural order of things, the capability. They cannot fight against that which they created, and they don't acknowledge their mistake. They knew at the time, they were warned. So let's think about this for a second. Let's face the sobering reality. Not only did that act happen then, but this act happened within one generation of officers. The officers who are mid-level officers, high-ranking middle-level officers now, captains and higher and so on and so forth, they were all foot soldiers in that. With their own hands, they dragged Jewish people out of their houses. With their own hands, they demolished synagogues and schools and yeshivas and houses of Jewish people, knowing they were creating a base for these terrorists to use to build an army. But there's more than that, my friends. The level of cruelty of these commanders that are commanders today against the Jewish people is horrific. That they demolished the communities in Gaza, which not only destroying the lives of those people, but destroying the very protective border communities that the Jewish people need. But there's more, my friends. Those commanders destroyed the lives of the Arab people in Gaza. The Arab people in Gaza are under the greatest, most terrible terror regime, one of the most terrible terror regimes in the world, a Marxist terror force masquerading as Islamists and Muslims and all kinds of nonsense propaganda as if they have anything to do with Islam. They abandoned all those people that were under Israeli military protection. They abandoned them to be murdered and tortured and terrorized by these terrorists that now control the Gaza Strip. It was these same commanders, my friend. They have no right. They have no right whatsoever to lead any office of command in any nation. There is no, you have communist generals and communist officers, but from any other nation, I'm not saying that those people are any better, but these people have destroyed the lives of millions of people. And now they are the commanders who people are trusting that they're going to be responsible for protecting the lives of millions of people. They're incapable of that in the natural order of things. Now, we know that the Torah says that tshuva is always possible. And we truly believe that. Even a person who personally participated in destroying the Jewish communities in Gaza and surrendering and deporting the Jews and surrendering millions of Arabs into the hands of terrorists, he could do tshuva today. He could get up on national television and say that he now sees that everything he did was wrong. He regrets it. He's willing to be publicly humiliate himself for the sins that he committed against the Jewish people and against humanity as a whole. But let's see them do that. That's what's necessary. Let's see them stand up to the reality of what they caused. But now they're just people following orders. They don't have the courage to stand up against false orders. Anyone in the Israeli armed forces that actually believes in God Almighty and is dedicated to the service of God Almighty is exited from the army at a very early stage. Because people like that don't follow orders from human beings. They follow orders from God Almighty himself. None of the commanders follow orders like that. They follow orders from human beings. And we could see that they're willing to do things against their own people and against the Arab people in order to preserve their jobs, in order to stay part of the inside of whatever it is they believe in. And we know, as we have a history of Israeli commanders retiring and going and leading the most leftist anti-Jewish groups in the Holy Land. We don't know what these commanders will do after they retire or are fired or replaced. They should be replaced, all of them, every single one of them, from the highest commander down to the colonels and to the captains, should all be replaced and permanently discharged from any military service, leaving aside any investigations that need to be done about their behavior in the past and the present. But they're not fit for service, and anyone who's relying upon them and their false promises that now they're going to finally change the dynamics for 50 years. They're lying to us. It's 100% lies about that they're going to attack. And the proof is in the pudding, my friends, that even while they're sending the Air Force and, bombing 2,000 bombs and all kinds of stuff into Gaza, the terrorists in Gaza are still able to send hundreds of missiles into the Holy Land. What does that mean? It means that all these missiles and all this Air Force pyrotechnics is not actually stopping the terror army from actually functioning. And as the Prime Minister of Israel, in an act of defeat, said that this war going into Gaza is going to take a very long time, it's not going to be quick. Well, anyone who's serious about winning a real war can complete it in a very short period of time. Because I can assure you that 90% of the people that live in Gaza are eager to be liberated from the terror of the Marxist terror governments and power structures that have been put into place by the Israeli government. 90%, there's no 2.3 million Arabs that are hostile to the Jewish people. They would be happier with nothing than to being relieved of these terrorists that terrorize them and manipulate them and use their schools and hospitals and buildings for terror operations and make it difficult for them to have productive jobs in the only productive economy around them, which is in Israel. They're all waiting for themselves to be liberated. It's not that they're not responsible for what's happening, because they're responsible for the seven commandments apply to every human being, includes Din. They have to bring justice against the terrorists. So they're not exonerated, but they're definitely eager for being liberated.